Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growth Network Podcast Office Hours. We do these every Wednesday, and we dive into the software tools and apps that we use in order to help our clients grow and do their podcasts. And we also do it for our own projects as well. My team's been meeting every week to kind of dig into these things, and we just started kind of turning it on so we could share it with all of you. So today I'm really excited to have Blaine from Castmagic here today. And with all the cool AI tools that are out there these days, I mean, with all the technology that's kind of opening up, it's really creating this sense that there are brand new tools that can make our jobs a lot easier. So I'm really excited to sit down with Blaine today, kind of learn about Castmagic and see what we can get a little demo of exactly how it can make our process easier, save us time and money in the process. So I'm going to welcome Blaine. Thank you so much for being here.
Linz, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Before we get started here, I'd like to hear a little bit about sort of your experience and what led to creating Castmagic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself am a podcaster. I guess I wasn't born as a podcaster, but being in the startup space, being an entrepreneur, we launched a podcast called DTC Pod a few years ago, which is one of the top podcasts in the e-commerce space. So basically what we do is we bring on all these different founders of amazing consumer brands and we talk to them about how they built their businesses, as well as adjacent people in the field. So think creators, venture capitalists, marketers, all sorts of people who are adjacent to this direct to consumer and consumer goods space. And through that, we found that we were having amazing conversations with guests, but so much of the value of those conversations, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the whole podcast, or even when it came time for us to promote the show and all these amazing things that we talked about, those insights were just locked so far in the transcripts of the podcast, and it was really hard to be able to bring and extract all that value out from these amazing conversations. So as someone who's built software for, the better part of the last decade myself, when we saw all the advancements happening in AI, we said, hey, that looks like a really amazing opportunity for us to be able to kind of solve one of our own biggest problems, which is, extracting content and creating content from our shows and our podcasts. So we started building, and we ended up building this internal tool that eventually became Castmagic, and we dog fooded it, as they like to say, on our own podcast. So this is like the de facto solution that I use every time I'm creating one of my shows and publishing notes and using it to grow. We're able to leverage Castmagic, and then we fortunately enough, it seems like a bunch of other podcasters shared the same problem, and we're really excited about it. So the adoption so far and reception to the product has been really amazing.
Hey, I muted myself. Fun times. So for people at home who want to follow along and maybe check it out while in another window, what's the website for Cast Magic before we dig in and start showing screens and talking about it?
Sure, it's castmagic.io.
Great. I preloaded that. So glad I grabbed the right one. Great. So feel free to check it out while we're doing this. But we wanted to kind of create a use case scenario and kind of dig in to actually see how it works here. And I'm really excited about that. Um, and so I sent Blaine a file, and we're going to just try it out. We're going to
Sure.
see, were you able to get that? That was.
Yeah, I have a file that I can show you exactly kind of how it works on.
Perfect.
Is
Yeah,
is
let's
that
see how it
cool?
goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and present here. Let's go share screen. Okay, share screen. Cool. So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, looks great.
So basically, as soon as you're into Castmagic, this is what you're going to see, right? You're going to see this workspace, and there's going to be this big upload button where you're able to upload any type of media file you have. So, we natively support MP3, MP4, WAV, and a couple other audio files. So you can drop those right in the box, and Castmagic will get to work. So clicking in right here, this is an example of one of our episodes. And the first thing we're going to be able to spit out is a clean transcript of the conversation, whoever's involved in the conversation. So as you can see here, this is one of our episodes that we have coming up that we haven't published yet. I'm the host, Blaine, and our guest was Philip. So, we're able to instantly get a really clean transcript that's broken out by both different speakers. We immediately eliminate all filler words, and it's just, pretty clean transcript. So if you'd like to download it and use it for captions or anything like that, we've got that ability here. You can just download it as a text file, SRT or VTT. And once the transcript is complete, and once our AI has an idea of who says what, we're able to start creating really compelling AI content about that particular episode. So the first thing right out of the box we're giving you is titles from that episode. So here we come up with 10 different titles for your show. We also do keywords, right? So these are all the different keywords that you might copy and deploy to your hosting platform or use as you're starting to build out, your SEO, blog posts, kind of the topics that you've covered. For shows that have a guest, we're able to generate a bio about the speaker. This is obviously really helpful a lot of times when you're setting context to your audience about who the guest you're having on your show is. And you don't even have to make them write their own bio or go hunting for it across the internet yourself, which is a nice thing. An introduction to the show. This is just, a pretty easy way to give you a building block for your show notes or whatever it is. This is just a quick intro for what you guys discussed on this podcast. The next thing we give is a timestamped overview. So these are basically chapter notes, and they go pretty in depth for all the different topics that you guys have covered in the show. We also, if you prefer the shorter version or the Spark Notes of that,
cool.
You're able to click through and get different variations on content here. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure, whichever content works for you best. We've got you. The next one I really like, it's called questions and answers from your show. The reason I like it is because sometimes it's not just about here's all the facts that are said in the show. It's also like, okay, well, what questions could you answer? How could you draw a guest in? How could you draw like a potential audience member or listener in by, what are the things that this episode answers that maybe we can use to hook our listeners or audience and kind of grab their attention. So that's what we generate here in the Q&A section. And then we also, of course, provide the answers to those questions if you'd like to use those as well. Okay, and then coming down a little bit further, we also give you the key topics and bullets that you discussed in the episode. And this one's really great because it just kind of does a really good job of extracting all the meat and potatoes of what you've covered in that episode and breaking it down in a really easy and digestible way. So here we start with like the key topics and then the subtopics beneath those topics. So for example, in our episode with Philip, who's an amazing like short form content creator, we talked about, one thing was identifying a target audience and, a successful content genre. Another topic we talked about was, your content creation strategies. And another topic we talked about was the importance of originality and hyper testing. And beneath each one of these macro topics, Castmagic is also able to generate all the subtopics and examples that go under those. So again, it's just a whole bunch of information that you're able to use to create, storytell, this is really the essence of what your episode is about. And again, we give that to you in several different variations. So if you prefer a single bulleted list, you've got that. If you prefer a couple different variations, you've got that. So again, yeah, we just give you it in a couple different formats. So whatever you're looking for in your workflow, we've got you. And then this one's great. This is the clip finder. So here, this does all the legwork of extracting memorable clips or memorable quotes from your show. So for us, when we have these guests on, part of it, what we want to do is we want to be able to extract quotes, whether we're turning that into an audiogram, whether we're passing it along to our video editor to go clip that out and find the right clip to create. This is perfect for that. And what we do is we're not just providing you with who said it, we're also providing you with the timestamp. So where you find that quote, and we're providing you with the quote itself, as well as a hook, like a CTA for that clip. So like you could think of it as a title. So if you could imagine like a social media card, which is like catches your attention with like, for example, this one, like creating viral content, boom, that's your title, that's your hook. Then we've got this entire quote, which is, exactly what he said. And then this is who said it and where to find it. So this is just, it's very flexible, but it helps your editors and posts or content creators be able to, not have to worry about, previously I would literally be doing this process, like going through this entire thing, reading the transcript and being like, does that look like a quote? And having to find it that way. So it just makes it a whole lot easier.
No, I mean, I try to think about, how many times have I pulled the first good quote I found instead of the best quote I found, right? Because there's just so much volume to sift through that you're like, oh, that's the first one that kind of rung a bell. Let's try it. Oh, that worked. Well, you don't know if there's a third or fourth one down the line that was actually better for exactly what you're trying to tell. But in the spirit of trying to get things done fast, you sometimes take the easiest route, and so this gives you a lot more to choose from.
Absolutely. And the next thing we've got is a reel script. So this one's fun. This is so what we found is a lot of our content creators, they're creating content across all these different platforms, and they'll like to actually create like a recap of their own episode. So they might create a reel announcing to their audience like, hey, this episode's live. So we actually give you a script that you can use for a social media post that you could like just read off and say, hey guys, I just hosted an amazing podcast about creating content. Here's some of the takeaways that we talked about, and then kind of go through them. And again, it just it eliminates the legwork of you having to create that script yourself if you're looking to create first person content. The next one is a LinkedIn post with a couple different variations. And again, these are great because you just take it, copy paste it on LinkedIn with your episode, and you don't have to do the thinking or the writing there, which is great. This one's one of my favorite and one of the ones we've had the best response to, which is our newsletter writer. So we're instantly able to generate an email newsletter from your episode. And the reason people have really liked this is, creating and writing an email newsletter is just, it's another thing to do, but it's very important to like build an audience, notify them when your new episodes are out, what the content is. But again, when you're doing all these different things, it's like, oh, the last thing I want to have to do is like now create an entire engaging newsletter and write the whole email. You know what I mean? So again, given all the context of the show, we're instantly able to spit out an entire newsletter for you, which is great.
Man, I'd just love to go back to time to 2017 when I was working on a podcast I loved and I got burned out on all this stuff. I'd edit the thing that I was really proud of, and then none of this was available, right? And so I tried to do some of it, did it poorly, and I burned myself out. So it's so cool that the stuff is available at a fingertip.
Absolutely. And the next thing is, if we're scrolling down here, I've got a little bit more to show you. So we've got the tweet thread, right? And again, in the same spirit as the newsletter, I think we've all seen that tweet threads tend to do pretty well on Twitter. It seems to be, an engaging way for people to consume content and also distribute it about what they're doing in another platform. One of the challenges of tweet threads are that, one, they're time intensive to write, and then also it's like, how do you get all the information that you've talked about to like flow together and make sense as one cohesive thought, right? So that was kind of the problem that we wanted to tackle. It wasn't just coming up with like random one-off tweets and giving a bunch of hashtags to use. It was more like, how do we create a cohesive thread of content that, yeah, if you want to distribute on Twitter, great, that's a great way to do it. But also, I mean, you could probably use this to create a LinkedIn carousel or any other sort of short form content. It just does a really good way in breaking up the content of the episode in a really digestible sort of format. So yeah, we've got a couple different variations there. If you're an
Nice
emoji
with the
fan,
emojis.
yeah,
That's
we've got you there. And it's great too, right? It's like it's giving you the emojis, and it's like, monetization strategies, and it's giving you the money emoji. We're giving you, find out how our guest uses tools like ChatGPT to generate interesting story for content, and it's got the robot, so it really knows what's going on. Podcast episode alert with the mic, so it's like it's really tuned in, which is just really cool to see. And the last feature that I kind of wanted to show you, which is a personal favorite, is our magic chat. And what this does is, again, you can think of this now as like Chat GPT for your audio file, and you can literally do anything. So here's just an example of how absurd this feature is. But like, I can literally say, write a summary about this episode in Spanish, and it like does it and does a fantastic job. So as broad as, like, whatever your imagination is, you can use it and come up with a custom prompt and generate it with the chat. So write a thank you note to Philip. Thank you email to Philip for joining us on GTC Pod, for example. Like, I can basically give it any sort of prompt, and it's going to go ahead and know, based on the context of what we talked about in that episode, it's going to go ahead and be able to generate a response. So yeah, there's a whole bunch in here, and it's just yep, here we go. So
Boom.
right
15
there, and
seconds
it's done. And it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
That is so cool.
that's a quick little tour of Castmagic. You can just think of it as your own personal copywriter for your podcast, and you can use it across all the different platforms to really grow and make sure that the essence of what you talked about and what you covered in your shows is taken care of.
Nice. Yeah, obviously my brain is just like, oh, I can do it for this, use it for this, use it for this. And I'm really interested and curious to know sort of what's kind of, we're just kind of, all these things are hitting the market right now. What's your roadmap? What are the things that you're like, oh, and we're going to be doing this and this and this going forward? How is it going to be growing?
Yeah, and this is something we think about a lot, right? I think two things that really jump out at us in terms of being essential is, one, how do we become an integral part of your workflow and not just be a simple tool that gives you a bunch of outputs, right? So that's where we start. But really, we're looking at it from the lens of the podcaster. What are all the things that they need to do that are big problems where we can save them time and speed up their workflow and their workflow efficiency? So some of those things that we're really focused on right now are, and these may even be pushed, maybe even resolved by the time we end up publishing, but things like being able to edit content outputs in app, right? Like, that one's been highly requested from our customers because, as we see here, you might want to edit one word or two words. So, okay, we'll give you the ability to, like, apply a couple edits. Right now, that editing is happening outside a platform. You can always just click a button, copy your content, dump it wherever you'd like. But again, we'll bring tools to be able to edit in platform, which will be really helpful for your workflow. And also linking to end destinations. That's something that's been heavily requested. Just being able to help push all this content once it's ready to places where people are able to consume, whether that's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's your hosting platform. So those are all things that are really top of mind. And then from a more product philosophy perspective, again, I think there's a whole bunch of opportunities to be able to tap into in not just analyzing this one episode like we've done, but like, how do we start to build threads and weave threads across all of your audio content that you've built and really start being able to leverage that. So it's kind of like, the more content you put in, the smarter the platform gets about you. The content you're creating can stitch together content from a whole bunch of different episodes. So that's definitely on our roadmap, and is something we're really excited about to be able to productize and bring to all sorts of podcasters and content creators.
Yeah, I think about one of my clients. I have a podcast called the Human Capital Lab with the university, and we're in between seasons, and they've asked me to put together some sort of compilation episodes, right? And so now I'm perfectly fine going through and finding the quotes myself and everything, but I imagine if I could just say, hey, here's the 10 episodes from this season, or 12, put together compilations around common themes, or something like that, and that would be pretty insane. As it is, I could use the magic right to just say, here's the places from these different ones. Can you combine them and suggest some quotes or clips? So you could kind of get around it, but yeah, it's fascinating what's possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that what it really comes down to, and why we even need to exist as a platform, is, I think Chat GPT coming out and OpenAI and all these amazing breakthroughs in, like, language models has been obviously incredible, but context is still so important. Workflow and context are just so important. So, for example, if you load up a Chat GPT instance and you haven't primed it with the right context, it's not going to perform nearly as well as if it knows exactly what you're looking for, what its goal is, and you've prompted it right. So, kind of where we come in is, like, how do we productize and bring that level of ease and excellence of content delivery to everyone in a really, really simple way without them having to just be operating out of one chat GPT window, copying an entire transcript, trying to paste it, having chat GPT say, oh, your transcript is too long, can you try again? And then you're kind of like stuck being like, oh, well, now what do I do? So yeah, I just think as long as we can leverage the best in class AI technologies available, and we continue building specifically for podcasters, content marketers, and audio creators, we're going to be in a really interesting place to be able to create a really, really compelling product.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to ask quickly about the pricing model so people can see how it would fit into their, not just their product workflow, but their billing workflow as well. And so, I think a lot of people, it's like you're either doing it yourself, doing what you can by yourself, not as comprehensively as something like this, or you're outsourcing to a VA somewhere at an hourly rate, and so
Exactly.
when you think about this. So how what's the pricing like? How might somebody consider sort of this versus their VA option, for example?
Sure. So the way the pricing works, we have a couple different plans. One is kind of like a hobbyist plan. So think, maybe you have one show, a weekly show, right? Like maybe you publish 4 episodes a month. The next one up would be a starter, which is, we're going to give you 500 minutes there, which is, closer to if the average podcast is, call it like 45 minutes or so. This one's going to give you about closer to 10 episodes per month, and that one's $99 a month. And then a rising star, that's more where we've been seeing usage from agencies that produce for multiple shows, and that's 1,500 minutes a month, and that's for $299. We do also offer 40% savings for our annual plan. So if this is something that you want to bring into your workflow and save a big chunk of change, that's definitely an
It's a big
option.
savings, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So it really knocks that down a lot. And then we're also having different options for overage. Like if you hit your 200-minute cap and you want to go over, we don't want that to be a prohibitive thing. So you'll easily be able to add in extra minutes if you find yourself needing more.
That's really cool. And so, to think about roughly, I don't, it's hard to generalize, but, we're talking 10, $15 an episode, maybe kind of breaking it down depending on the level. And I think no matter where your VA is from, that's cheaper, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
it's,
So
you know,
so the way I actually love to think of it is, and because we've seen this with agencies and with VAs and everything, I think the ultimate way to use this is use Castmagic as a tool to empower whomever you're working with, right? Because if you think of it as like, okay, I'm investing $10 in my episode to do all my content processing and get it 95% of the way there across all my different platforms. And then you have someone who can actually execute on that. And you're growing a newsletter, you're growing your Twitter, you're growing your episode across LinkedIn, across all these other platforms. Like the amount that you would have to invest to be able to pull that off compared to, this is it's crazy. Like for 20
mhm.
bucks, basically, if you combine cost of Castmagic plus a VA who's able to distribute all the content that you generate in the course of an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, whatever it takes to like actually publish across all your platforms. I mean, you're able to really go wide and really get a lot of eyeballs and really show up everywhere for your audience.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like too, like it's really, devised with podcasters in mind, but any content creator is going to find their way to value in this, and so I think that it's got a lot of utility. Kind of like anybody who, and these days we're all multi-mode, right? It's like, yeah, I'm a podcaster, but it's all going on YouTube too, and it's all going here and here
Exactly.
and here. So to be able to kind of say, all right, this is my the sort of hub for all the promo copy it's really streamlines it to me.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing is this kind of overlap where everyone's a podcaster, everyone's a content marketer, everyone's a creator in some capacity, and we just find voice and long form audio to be a very, very interesting platform with a whole bunch of opportunity to tap into. So yeah, that's why we built Castmagic. It's doing great so far. I'm enjoying using it. People have been loving it. So yeah, that's all I got for you today.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time here, and um, that's it was fun to go through it. It's like my brain just kind of goes, "Oh man, what would I do here, 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 and here?" So I'm sure that anybody who's watching would have the same feeling. If they create stuff, they've run into this wall before. So um, thank you so much, Blaine. And then again, for people who want to check it out, castmagic.io is the address. Um, connect, check it out. It's a pretty cool thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and let Blaine go. He's a busy guy running a cool thing. So thanks so much for being here today, Blaine. Um, and we'll catch you on next time.
Thanks for having me, Linz. Have a good one.
All right, so that was my conversation with Blaine from Cast Magic, and it was really such a treat to kind of get to see inside the exact way that this feeds you different copy for your podcast promotion. I know that's something I struggle with all the time, and I think a lot of creators do, is that making the thing is where the creative impulse comes. Promoting the thing, while we know it's important, it doesn't always make the cut, and it's easy to kind of side skirt it and make your next thing instead of promoting the things that you've made. And I'd love to use this just for some of my back episodes, and I think there'd be a great way to kind of sign up and dig back into old stuff too. So definitely check out castmagic.io. We will have a link in the down here below. And so today I'm wrapping up the office hours here. If you have any questions, put them down below in the chat. We'll be in here throughout the next week or so, and answering questions and whatnot. And stay tuned for next week, because next week we'll be going through another piece of software, kind of learning how we can extract more value from it and help our own workflows with our podcasts and any content creation project. Because as I was talking about with Blaine, you don't know. I mean, every project has different elements to it, and it has to go to a podcast and a YouTube and a newsletter and all these things. And so, any project with media um, requires some tools to kind of pull it into focus. And the better we get at those tools, the easier everything starts to go, the more fun this work is, and the more sustainable it is. So, a big part of our growth is learning how to do this work in ways that don't burn us out. We get to utilize our tools the best we can, and we learn to continually get better at them so that it is fun and easy to make this content instead of a chore and a bore. So, thank you for watching these office hours right here, and tune in next week for some more office hours, and I'll see you then. Thanks. Bye bye.